Howdy folks, thought I'd come on here and it's about time I did another collection video, and rather than watch a movie because I don't know if people are really getting into it, but you know, of course with the pandemic going on, we've got this crazy winter going on. I guess you know, the South has really been hit hard with the snowstorm. We've been hit hard with some snow, and of course I've been sicker than a dog since New Year's. I'm still not 100% over it. If you think I'm sounding a little nasally, that's because yeah, I've been struggling with bronchitis and a bacterial infection. Well, the bronchitis went away, but then came the bacterial infection, and yeah, and it's slowly going away. But this past weekend was Valentine's Day, so I thought I'd go through my collection and pull out movies I thought had a romantic flavor or romance that was crucial to the story, and some things that where romance is the central part, and it may be a comedy and it may be a drama and so on and so forth. Thus being said, this excludes all the Hallmark Channel stuff. This past winter I went crazy and buying every Walmart Channel movie I could find on DVD, and there's just too many of those to count. I may do those as a separate collection. That's how many those are. Yeah, but these are movies I would call romantic movies. You know, I know this is a little late, but like I said, there's been some obligations, and of course, just things have been crazy just in the world altogether. So yeah, we'll kick things off. I've got about, let's see, 6 piles here. Even a few of them are collections. So yeah, so let's get in here. So we're gonna do backwards alphabetical. So just because of shelving reasons, so when I put these back on the shelf, I can just go straight down and put them where they go. So the first one here is actually a remake. It is Dennis Quaid and Rene Russo starring in Yours, Mine, and Ours. This is a remake from a classic MGM movie. Yeah, even has Drake Bell from Drake and Josh in here. So also, I think, yeah, Miranda Cosgrove too. Of course, it was also a this was a Paramount, MGM, and Columbia and Nickelodeon co-production. So guess what? They got a bunch of Nickelodeon stars in here as well. So yeah, Yours, Mine, and Ours. The theme being, you know, getting married, falling in love, and if you have kids from other relationships, so you come together and make one family, right? Next up is a romantic comedy. I saw this years and years ago. I have the DVD here, but I've yet to watch it recently. It's a movie from the 90s, and it's Sandra Bullock and Bill Pullman, While You Were Sleeping. Yeah, it has some quite humorous stuff in it, and with you know, Sandra Bullock, she falls in love with this guy because she works at a train station and she collects the fare, and she has this crush on this one guy, and there's an incident that happens and she ends up saving his life. The guy falls asleep he falls into a coma, basically, like a temporary coma, and when he wakes up, he doesn't she makes up this whole thing that we were engaged and going to get married, and so they give him drugs to help remember. But then as time goes on, the dude's brother shows up, played by Bill Pullman, and she ends up falling in love with him. So yeah, while you were sleeping, yeah, I haven't watched it in a long time, but I remember what it was about. Yeah, also, I find out I have a ton of romantic comedies in here. So, yeah, if you think I'm a little biased here and not spending too much time on them, I'm sorry, but yeah. Another romantic comedy, Mel Gibson, Helen Hunt, What Women Want. Yeah. They just recently did a sequel to that where it's the opposite sex doing it and a different race. So, yeah. West Side Story, classic musical, also a love story. Basically, it's Romeo and Juliet, basically, with gangs in the 50s. Weird Science. I would classify it as yes because basically this, Kelly LeBrock, they have a crush on Kelly LeBrock, and she actually helps these two guys find girlfriends, and so yeah. We got Walk to Remember with a Mandy Moore and Shane West, Nicholas Sparks movie. Yeah, this was before The Notebook. So yeah. Walk the Line, Joaquin Phoenix, Reese Witherspoon, the Johnny Cash biopic, and I would also go on to say it's June Carter's biopic too. I mean, because it is about their relationship. The Vow. This is one of those movies I can't remember if it's also Nicholas Sparks, but it's definitely within that flavor of movies, even though it's not a Nicholas Sparks movie. Elvis Presley and Margaret, Viva Las Vegas. Yeah, and this is the old Warner home video version. Urban Cowboy, John Travolta, Deborah Winger. I always have that feeling I've missed one. I always have that feeling I've missed one. I always have that feeling I've missed one. Yeah, so moving right along. Again, this is a multi-genre movie. Action, comedy, romantic comedy. True Lies. Arnold Schwarzenegger with Jamie Lee Curtis as his wife. And speaking of James Cameron, Titanic. You can't go without mentioning Titanic on this list. I would even put this as one of the greatest movies ever made. So a lot of people beg to differ because there is some hatred towards this film. But there are those, most of the people do love this movie. I mean, for Pete's sake, it, for the longest time, was the highest grossing movie of all time. Eric Bana and Rachel McAdams, The Time Traveler's Wife. Yeah, kind of has a sci-fi element to it that he can travel through time. Yeah. Don Bluth animated film, Thumbelina. Yes, we're going to be including the animated movies here too, because, and even with this, even though it's kind of, there's things in it that kind of rip off of Disney. I hate to say that about Don Bluth, because Don Bluth was his own style of animation. He was a great animator. He still is. I mean, he's still alive. I shouldn't say like he's dead. But Don Bluth here, in this movie particularly, he did do a sequence that kind of rips off Aladdin's A Whole New World, with Let Me Be Your Wings. Yeah, and he even hired Jodie Benson, who did the voice of Ariel from The Little Mermaid, to do the voice of Thumbelina here. So, yeah. And next up, we have Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor collection, which includes Who's Afraid of a Virginia Woolf, The VIPs, The Sandpiper, and The Comedians. So, yeah. Not much to say. It's a collection that Warner has put out. I can get it out of the box. Yeah. So it's one of those deals where the classic film directed by Elia Kazan, starring Marlon Brando and Vivian Leigh, Streetcar Named Desire. Yeah. Stella! Yeah. So there you go, in a nice digibook. At the time, this was kind of a controversial film. It was a controversial play to begin with, but yeah. Next up, kind of a sci-fi fantasy romance movie from John Carpenter, who's a master of horror, out of all things. It is Starman. Yeah, with Jeff Bridges and was it Karen? Yeah, Karen Allen. Yeah, I'm trying to think of it was the chick from Indiana Jones. Karen Allen and Jeff Bridges. Yeah, so, and an interesting thing, this movie came out after E.T., but it was the movie that kept E.T. from being made at Columbia Pictures. There's a story about originally E.T. was going to be made at Columbia Pictures, but Columbia turned it down because they had just purchased Starman. And it was kind of similar in tone, and they didn't want to. It was a similar subject, in that they didn't want to have two movies of the same competing against each other. And a more recent one. Now this one is also a remake, but the song on it is just recently got a cover by Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood. The song being Shallow, but the movie is A Star Is Born. This is actually the third time that this film has been made. A little bit brief history about it. There was a film starring Judy Garland. It was made, and then fast forward to the 70s. Barbra Streisand and Chris Christopherson remake it for the first time, and then Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga here make it for the third adaptation. Next up, classic 80s movie directed by Joel Schumacher, St. Elmo's Fire. Yeah. Again, I always have that feeling I've missed one. Now the next one here is a faith-based film. It's actually the retelling of an old biblical story. Story of, gosh. I can't think of it. King Solomon. Yeah, there you go. It's the story of King Solomon, retold in modern day, and of course, they made the Solomon character. They changed his. Well, it's the name is Jed King is the name of the character, and they made him a country singer. And eventually, he gets married, has a family, and then goes off on tour, making it big. But also, his dad was a very famous country singer, but he kind of follows in his dad's same path, and that is he has an affair. And this woman here this is the wife, this is the one he has the affair with, who's a fellow singer, but he ends up turning back. And what matters most, it's a faith-based film, PG-13, because it does have some stuff in it that's not appropriate for children. I know that sounds strange, being like a faith-based film or a Christian film, but yeah, it doesn't shy away from stuff that's reality. Next up, John Hughes movie. Actually, John Hughes production. Howard Dutch directed this one. It's Some Kind of Wonderful. Yeah, so, yeah, Leah Thompson. It's Leah Thompson, Mary Stuart Masterson, Eric Stoltz. So, yeah. And we got a couple Disney ones here. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. But yeah, think about it. Who comes and saves her? Prince Charming. Again, Sleeping Beauty. Prince Charming. I didn't include the Maleficent films because those are solely about Maleficent from the villain side. So I didn't put that in, but I did include the original Sleeping Beauty, the Walt Disney classic. Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, Sleepless in Seattle, directed by Nora Ephron. You're going to be seeing them quite a bit. Silver Linings Playbook, with pretty much an all-star cast. Jennifer Lawrence won the Academy Award for Best Actress in this film, so. Another John Hughes movie, 16 Candles. Yeah, come on, this has to be on the list because it's about crushes and whatnot. And there is some interesting hijinks in this movie as well, so. And the next four, I'm just going to get them out of the way. The Shrek films, yes. I'm definitely putting Shrek on because that's Shrek. Yeah, Shrek Ever After, Shrek the Third, Shrek 2, and Shrek. Because of the course of these films, Shrek meets Fiona. Shrek, has to fight to keep Fiona, and so on and so forth, and of course the family, and yeah, it just goes on because it becomes a family battle where Shrek has to protect the family. Let me take a swig of a tasty beverage here. And you'll notice there's a lot of John Hughes in here too for a little bit. This is She's Having a Baby from 1988. Kevin Bacon, Elizabeth McGovern. Definitely romantic comedy. It's probably more romantic than anything. It does have its funny moments, obviously, but it's definitely tender-hearted. I think a little bit more tender-hearted than some of the other John Hughes romantic movies. And this is a film about... I also included films that's a little on, how shall I say, because it's Valentine's Day, and, you know, crushes, and even though you're married, this doesn't, I don't condone this whatsoever. Yeah, the little on the naughty side. Now, I don't include sex comedies here, but definitely, definitely a romance that shouldn't happen. I'm going to put it that way. 7-Year Itch. Yeah, with Marilyn Monroe. Yeah, and Scenes from a Mall. Bette Midler, Woody Allen. About, you know, this dysfunctional couple. And it all takes place inside of a mall. How they gonna get divorced and then get back to rekindle the relationship, all within one day inside of a mall. Yeah. And of course, that wasn't a very good reviewed film at the time. I remember, I think Siskel and Ebert kind of blasted it because it was kind of stupid. But anyway, classic 80s film. Say Anything, John Cusack. Yeah, just Cameron Crowe film. Say Anything. Julia Stiles and Sean Patrick Thomas in Save the Last Dance. Flick from, I believe, 2001. And, yeah. About them dancing and falling in love with each other. Classic 70s movie. Saturday Night Fever. Yes, it is. Because even though Tony Manero is kind of a jerk, but he's so good at dancing at the disco, and yeah, I don't know what else to say about this movie. I mean, it's kind of speaks for itself. But yeah. Next up, again, this is a relationship that goes wrong, and sometimes you shouldn't get involved. But nonetheless, you give in to the romantic temptation, and we got Samson from Pureflix Entertainment and the classic Cecil B. DeMille, Samson and Delilah. Samson and Delilah. So yeah. And next up, this is a Nicholas Sparks movie, Safe Haven. Josh Duhamel and Julianne Hough. Romantic comedy with Daryl Hannah and Steve Martin, Roxanne. And Steve Martin's hilariously oversized nose. A romantic comedy collection from Sony Pictures. We got Fools Rush In, The Wedding Planner, and Maid of Honor. So yeah, there you go. Trying to think. Huh. Thought I seen something. There's some double bills here. Also, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan and You Got Mail, and Diane Lane and John Cusack and Must Love Dogs in this 2-pack from Warner Brothers. But the nice thing is that one is a dual disc and not the flipper discs. The next 2-pack is from Paramount, and it is How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days with Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey, and No Strings Attached with Natalie Portman and Ashton Kutcher. So yeah, got that at Big Lots, and again, the nice thing is it's double discs, meaning each movie is on each disc and not on one disc where they've compressed everything. Next up, this one's kind of a fun movie. It's kind of cheesy because of the period it was made. Again, you gotta think this was post Saturday Night Fever, and they made it so a younger audience can see it because Saturday Night Fever was rated R. And the popularity of that film was so great that Saturday Night Fever eventually was re-released as a PG movie, where they cut several inappropriate things out of the movie to get it to a PG rating. And then the copycats started to follow. Well, this one's from 1979, and this was like the next generation of discos, which was the roller discos. We had one nearby here called, I'm not going to mention the name of it, but we had one in a nearby town, and the kids would love to come and do roller skating on it. But this one is starring Linda Blair and Olympic gold skating legend Jim Bray in his acting debut in 1979's Roller Boogie. Now, like I said, this movie is cheesy 70s as all get out, but it is definitely a fun movie to watch, and yeah. And I'm just going to go ahead and get these out of the way because it's the same story, essentially, just different adaptations. And this is a hero, an historic hero, been told to the screen at various degrees of quality and different styles of films. It's Robin Hood. Okay, so here's the Disney's Robin Hood from 1973. Here's the original one with Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland, The Adventures of Robin Hood. And here's Mel Brooks's Robin Hood Men in Tights and Robin Hood Prince of Thieves. Yes, and the thing is, there is that romantic element to this film, or this story, because Robin Hood is, Maid Marian. And, of course, it's fighting for her and saving her. So, yeah. I'll throw this one in. The Resurrection of Gavin Stone. Even though the story is more about the redemption of this guy who's an actor. He was a former child actor who eventually gets saved and comes to Christ and performing a passion play or an Easter pageant. He ends up falling in love with the organizer of the play, this woman right here. And yeah, and even stars Shawn Michaels from WWE, and I think WWE even helped produce this movie. Directed by Dallas Jenkins. For those of you who don't know who Dallas Jenkins is, his dad is Jerry B. Jenkins, who did the Left Behind movies. And Dallas currently right now is doing a TV series called The Chosen, which is basically the story of Christ told in a television like format, like a Netflix like series. And it's been the first time that anybody has ever told the story of Christ through that type of filmmaking. Okay, next up is Disney's Princess and the Frog. Pretty self-explanatory. Pretty much of the Disney princesses are in here. The ones that I have. Yeah, so, and of course, this is a classic tale, Disney's twist of, the Princess and the Frog. And we got The Princess Bride with Robin Wright and Carrie Elways. Kind of a swashbuckling fairy tale about, you guessed it, falling in love. And DVD's falling out of the case. But yeah, The Princess Bride. There's a Criterion version of this somewhere. I don't know if it's still in print or not, but yeah. Another John Hughes movie, Pretty in Pink. With this one was also directed by Howard Dutch. And starring Molly Ringwald, James Spader, Annie Potts. Yeah, quite a number of people in it. And this one's kind of an odd one, but it's also a Christmas movie. At the same time, it's Penny Marshall's movie, The Preacher's Wife, which stars Whitney Houston, Denzel Washington, and Gregory Hines. Yeah, and Whitney Houston plays the wife to Gregory Hines here, who's a preacher at this church, and the church is falling on hard times, and this angel, played by Denzel Washington, comes in and kind of breathes new life into the church, and of course their marriage is on the rocks, and so it kind of helps revive their marriage, but in the same time, at a certain point, Whitney Houston does kind of fall for Denzel, and then revealed that, yeah, the rest is history. That that he's an angel and can't necessarily fall in love with her. Now the next one is kind of a romantic fantasy. It's really, this movie gets a lot of praise. It's kind of underrated because of Kathleen Turner's performance in this movie. And it's Kathleen Turner and Nicolas Cage and Peggy Sue Got Married. And it's definitely a fantasy movie because she goes back in time and relives her high school days when she met her husband, played by Nicolas Cage, and what was about it that she fell in love with, and kind of a, you know, what would happen if you went on the left instead of taking the right situation, you know. Next one is a kind of a, I don't know, it's more of a sci-fi movie. And it's about the relationship between these two people, passengers, with Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence. And there's a mishap on this. It's a near future movie where, like, planet Earth is I forget kind of, I forget if it was like a planet Earth is dying situation. But anyway, these two people, they go on this ship filled with a bunch of other passengers, and at one point during the ship's journey, that the passengers have to enter cryogenic sleep for 90 years because they're traveling to a different planet, and it takes a really, really long time to get there. But they're supposed to enter this cryogenic sleep. Well, they all do, but Chris Pratt, for some reason, wakes up 1 year into the process. 1 year. And so he's the only one on this ship that's awake. But he also boarded the ship after seeing this girl, played by Jennifer Lawrence, who he has a crush on, and he stays awake for himself for about a year. But after living alone, he starts to go insane a little bit, and he realizes that he needs somebody to be with him, and so he decides to wake her up from her sleep. And the downside is they cannot go back into the sleep chamber. It was a one-time deal. If it malfunctions, so be it. But if you haven't seen the movie, I'm not going to spoil what happens, but they reveal definitely why Chris Pratt's chamber woke up. They reveal what happens, and they do take care of the situation. Now, the next two go together because one's a remake and the other one is the original. It's a simple story about these twin girls wanting to get their parents back together. The Parent Trap. Here's the original one with Haley Mills playing both roles. And this also includes The Parent Trap 2, which I think was a Disney Channel movie. And anyway, yeah, The Parent Trap, and then this one here is the Lindsay Lohan version, where Lindsay Lohan played both versions, and also has Natasha Richardson and Dennis Quaid. And this one was directed by the people that did the Father of the Bride movies, Nancy Meyers and Charles Shire, who are a real life married couple. So yeah. Goldie Hawn, Kurt Russell, Overboard, romantic comedy, and this is a fun movie. Yeah. Need I say more about this one? The Notebook, Nicholas Sparks, Nick Cassavetes film, Ryan Gosling, Rachel McAdams, James Gardner, Gina Rowland. And need I say more? What happens when you do have, when you do make love to your wife? 9 months. But it's a little bit different because they are single. They are engaged and no, they're not engaged, but they're dating. And yeah. So 9 months. Another Nicholas Sparks movie, Nights in Rodanthe, with Richard Gere and Diane Lane. Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, Kat Dennings and Michael Cera. My Girl with Jamie Lee Curtis, Dan Aykroyd, Macaulay Culkin, and Anna Klumsky. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Classic 90s flick. I think it was 90s. Yeah, 91. But yeah. I knew it was after Home Alone, but I couldn't remember. My Fair Lady, Audrey Hepburn, Rex Harrison. Classic musical, even a love story, so yeah. Mr. and Mrs. Smith. This is the movie that Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie met on and decided to get married. Moonstruck, Cher and Nicolas Cage. This was the Academy Award winner for Best Picture in '87. I think it was. Oscar-winning writer John Patrick Shanley, and won Best Actress for Cher. So yeah, Moonstruck. And I think there's a Shout Factory release coming of that movie, so that's the old MGM Blu-ray. Another Nicholas Sparks movie, I think. Yeah. Message in a Bottle. This one was way before The Notebook. This was, yeah, this was Message in a Bottle. With Kevin Costner and Robin Wright. Robin Wright Penn at the time, but it's now Robin Wright because they've divorced. But yeah, Message in a Bottle. This one's kind of a odd movie to begin with. It's a romantic movie, it's a fantasy movie, it's a comedy, it's got action in it. It's Chevy Chase and Daryl Hannah in Memoirs of an Invisible Man. Also directed by John Carpenter. Also stars Michael McKean and Sam Neill. But yeah, originally this was supposed to be directed by Ivan Reitman, but for whatever reason he turned it down and at the last minute, and they brought in John Carpenter, and groundbreaking special effects in this movie. It was one of those movies where it came out in 1992, but it was one of those movies that was it was done, the effects were done by ILM, and it was like combination of optical and digital, so it was kind of one of those movies where they did partial one thing and partial the other. Now they do everything digital. The next three, because they're kind of romantic it's a comedy that takes place around a romance, around a relationship or romance. So we got Meet the Parents which is basically meeting the parents. Meet the Fockers, which is meeting the in-laws. And Little Fockers, which is after the marriage has happened, or while the marriage is taking place and after the grandkids show up. So, yeah. And then we got, I have yet to see this film. I have no idea what it's about. I haven't heard great things about this movie, but it's Emilia Clarke and Sam Claflin in Me Before You. And next to Mamma Mia. Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. And another Nicholas Sparks movie, The Lucky One, with Zac Efron, Taylor Schilling. This movie actually saved the studio that distributed it. Paramount Pictures was going through a tough time in the 1960s and early 70s. And they needed some movies. They had greenlit some movies that were not very successful, but they were on the verge of closing down the studio altogether. Gulf and Western, who owned Paramount. But it was one particular executive by the name of Robert Evans who made a film saying that, hey, we have all these great projects lined up. We're really excited about them. Some of them were failures, and some of them were successful. But he said, but there's two projects I really want to talk to you about, and that it's very important that we make these movies because we're extremely proud of them. One of them was The Godfather, which went on to become a huge hit for Paramount, and Love Story with Ali MacGraw and Ryan O'Neal. And Robert Evans ended up was married to Ali MacGraw at the time. As a matter of fact, at the premiere, she could not attend because she was very deep in a pregnancy. But yeah, the film came out and was a huge hit for Paramount. And it's considered to be one of the greatest love story movies. In fact, titled Love Story. So, yeah. And we got Elvis and Love Me Tender. Of course, also has Deborah Paget and Richard Egan. Another romantic comedy. I ended up seeing this in the theater. I was probably a little too young to be seeing it in the theater. I did a Kdog'S Goes to the Movies on it, and it's Look Who's Talking with John Travolta and Kirstie Alley. And also Olivia Dukakis, Abe Vigoda, Bruce Willis as the voice of Mikey. Yeah, this movie was rated PG-13, and I saw this at the age of 5. Another Nicholas Sparks movie, The Longest Stride. Britt Robertson, Scott Eastwood. Classic Disney flick, The Little Mermaid. Yep, because she's in love with the prince. Another Nicholas Sparks movie, The Last Song. And this is the one with Liam Hemsworth and Miley Cyrus. Disney movie, Lady and the Tramp. Of course, this is the original. I don't know if they're going to release the the remake, live action remake. They might, but yeah, for right now, I have the original animated classic. La La Land. Yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of this movie. I think it has some great sequences in it, but it didn't turn out the way I was going to that I expected it to. If that makes any sense, because it to me it was a little depressing, a little bit, but it's a well-made movie. It went in directions I just didn't particularly care for, but that's me. But a lot of people love that movie, and of course, great musical. But again, it just kind of, I was a bit underwhelmed. Now, I put this film in here because this is a film about when love is lost, and it's about the love of a family that's kind of been torn apart, but there's still feelings there, or they leave you the hint that there's probably still some feelings there, even though the romance is gone. Kramer versus Kramer. This one was kind of a tough one to put on this list because it kind of leaves you open to, like, maybe there's something there, maybe they'll get back to, like, maybe it's like an eyedropper of a hint. It's not really prominent whether that's going to happen or not. Now, this one had to go on because love can make you do some foolish things, like party too hard, drink, and it's knocked up. Yeah. I didn't put the 40-Year-Old Virgin because that's a different type of... to me, that's just a sex comedy. This is a different story. I think, because I think they had to have some form of a relationship there. Even though it was kind of a one-night stand, but yeah. It's not love like it should be. Let me put it that way, but it is. The next up, The King and I. Go back to the more traditional stuff. Yeah, The King and I. And no, I don't have the Sound of Music, because I think that was... There is a love story there with The Sound of Music, but it's different. It's more about the family. It's more of a family movie than it is about a romance. Next up is Just Like Heaven. This movie kind of follows in the steps of, like, Ghost, because Mark Ruffalo and Reese Witherspoon, she's a ghost. And Mark Ruffalo moves into the apartment that she lived in, and she's haunted it, but it's not scary, it's just funny, and they end up falling in love with each other even though she's dead. Another Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan flick. Matter of fact, this was the first one that they came together on. Joe versus the Volcano, from back in 1990. And yeah. This was a John Patrick Shanley who did Moonstruck, who wrote the screenplay to Moonstruck. He wrote and directed this. Got Steven Spielberg to produce it, and of course, it's become a kind of a cult favorite over the years. It Could Happen to You. Again, another romantic comedy with Nicolas Cage, Bridget Fonda. And I had to throw this one in as well because also starring Meg Ryan and Dennis Quaid, who ended up being her real life husband until they divorced. And then you got Martin Short in the midst of that. Also also produced by Steven Spielberg, directed by Joe Dante, and it's Inner Space. Kind of a goofy movie. It was not a big hit back in the day, but again, like Joe versus the Volcano, it's become kind of a favorite amongst, you know, people of the, you know, 80s comedies and stuff like that. Indivisible, which is a PureFlix entertainment movie. Also a military movie. Yeah, it's about, you know, wives and their husbands in the military, and we got I Still Believe, true story about Jeremy Camp and his first wife, played by Britt Robertson, I think. But anyway, it's about his first wife, when she died, and she died of cancer, and he has since remarried and has a beautiful family, but he was deeply in love with his first wife, and he's deeply in love with the one he has now, but this tragedy happened, and yeah, and it's based on a true story. And then the movie that kind of led to that being told was I Can Only Imagine. Now, I Can Only Imagine is really about Bart Millard from the Christian music group Mercy Me and his father, and the song that inspired him to write the song, his father. But also there is the romantic relationship between him and his wife that's being told in this film. And how she was willing to stand up with him, but he kept pushing her away. And yeah, and the heartache that came with that, and yeah, it's a really, really good film. Also starring Dennis Quaid, and Trace Adkins. Yeah, it's a really, really good movie. And next we got Marilyn Monroe, Betty Grable, and Lauren Bacall. How to Marry a Millionaire. Of course, being kind of a romantic comedy. You know, definitely from the 1953. So there you go. And we got Hope Floats with Sandra Bullock, Harry Connick Jr., Gina Rollins, of course featuring the main love theme being performed by Garth Brooks, the song To Make You Feel My Love. Yeah. Next up is Honeymoon in Vegas with Nicolas Cage, James Caan, and Sarah Jessica Parker. Romantic comedy from the early 90s. And of course you got Elvis involved or the Flying Elvi, actually. It's the Flying Elvi. And next up is Will Smith in Hitch. About this matchmaker with also having Kevin James and this Eva Mendes, and how he ends up falling in love himself and breaking his own rules. John Cusack in High Fidelity. I really like this movie, even though it may be a little dated, but you know what? Vinyl and record stores have kind of come back into popularity, and so I don't want to say that this movie helped bring it back, but it's there's definitely the love story here. It's told. John Cusack breaks the third wall in this movie because he talks like how I'm talking to you. That's how he talks to the audience as the narrator. He owns this. He owns this record store in Chicago, and he has these two guys in there. One of them's played by Jack Black, and they kind of drive customers away. But also you have it's all about his romantic life and how he broke up with this girl, and he's eventually tries to get her back. Next up is a kind of an odd movie. It's a love story nonetheless, but it's an odd movie about falling in love with artificial intelligence, and it's with Joaquin Phoenix, and Joaquin Phoenix and Her. Also has Olivia Wilde and Amy Adams, and Scarlett Johansson plays the AI. That he talks to. Also another bizarre love story, Harold and Maude. And this was from 1971, about this young man who's obsessed with death, falling in love with this senior citizen. I don't know exactly how old Ruth Gordon is in this movie, but she's definitely old. But it is a love story nonetheless. And I threw in this one because it's basically these old farts just fighting over a girl. Grumpy Old Men and Grumpy Old Men 2. Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau fighting over Anne Margaret. Next up is God Bless the Broken Road, which is about the wives who have husbands who are in the military, but this one, how Indivisible was about the guy coming back home and the wives and their relationships with their husbands. This one takes a different turn, and the husband is killed in action. And it's about her trying to move on. Another classic romantic movie, Ghost. Patrick Swayze, Demi Moore, and Whoopi Goldberg. Yeah. And we got Frozen and Frozen 2. From Here to Eternity. Of course, when you see this shot, you've always seen this shot in other movies. This is the movie that is from. From Here to Eternity, with Burt Lancaster, Montgomery Clift, Deborah Keir, Donna Reed, and Frank Sinatra. And we got Friends with Benefits, Justin Timberlake, Mila Kunis. And I was debating to put this one in, even though I have the original and I have the remake. But I was debating because it's really not about a romance. Even though the main character does kind of steal the villain's girlfriend. And she does help him with the town. Because she's also the preacher's wife. And it's Footloose. This being the remake with Kenny Warmall, Julianne Hough, Andy McDowell, and Dennis Quaid. Dennis Quaid's in a lot of these movies. And the original with Kevin Bacon, Laurie Singer, John Lithgow, and Diane Wiest. And also Chris Penn in here too. Yeah, and this is the... I wish Paramount would do another transfer of this movie, because this Blu-ray was not the best transfer. There was some DNR issues with it. But yeah, I will say this, the original movie overall is better than the remake. And we got Mel Gibson, flick from the 90s, 92, Forever Young. And this, of course, based on a screenplay by J.J. Abrams, but he's credited as Jeffrey Abrams. J.J. Abrams with the screenplay to this. Forever Young. It's about this guy who's in World War II, I believe. He's a test pilot. He's a 1939 test pilot flying B-25s, and something happens to his woman, played by Isabel Glasser. Tragedy strikes, and so he finds himself volunteering because he doesn't have her in his life. He volunteers to be cryogenically frozen and is awoken in 1992 by Elijah Wood, and he ends up moving in with Elijah Wood and his mother, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, and he's trying to find a way to get what happened to his I don't know if it was his wife, or definitely they were soulmates. So he's trying to find out what happened to her, and eventually he does find her. Spoiler, but I'm not going to tell you exactly what else happened. But yeah. Next up is another faith-based film. But it kind of followed like the song that I mentioned before. This one was kind of in the same tone. Forever My Girl. And but this one was like just a fictitious story, not adapted from the Bible or anything like that. But it's about this guy who becomes a huge country music singer, and he was ready to walk down the aisle with this girl, and at the last minute he bails on her, and he bails on her, and he's not another one of them are aware that the fact that she's pregnant. And so when the guy returns back to his hometown, he tries to find her, and then finds this and discovers that this little girl's his daughter. But anyway, yeah, moving along. Another romantic comedy with Tim Allen and Kirstie Alley, For Richer or Poor. Saw this one in the theater back in the day. Was it 1997? Yeah, this was Tim Allen in the height of home improvement fame, and this was the first non-Disney movie that Tim Allen made. And of course the story revolves around these this rich couple. One of the guy that's in charge of their bookings is committing fraud and sets them up for IRS tax fraud. And of course their marriage at the same time is on the fritz. They're getting ready to divorce. And once this incident happens, they are forced to hide. And so they go hide into the Amish countryside where no one knows where they are. And so they end up disguising themselves as this Amish family's relative, and he has to learn how to plow the fields and work the farm the old Amish way, which is no tractors, no huge equipment. It's with a horse and a plow and walking behind, using animals. Okay, next up is another faith-based film. This one it's fireproof. Basically, this about fireproofing your relationships and fireproofing your marriage. With the tagline, "Never leave your partner behind." But yeah, Kirk Cameron, Aaron Bethea. The interesting thing was, I found quite interesting about this. There were two interesting things. Alex Kendrick, who, one of the Kendrick brothers, at the same time he made this movie, or as the film was getting released, and released his companion book, The Love Dare, he himself checked into marriage counseling. And also, shortly after the film's release, Aaron Bethea was married. She ended up getting a divorce. So, yeah, art didn't necessarily imitate life there, and I'm not necessarily judging, but it just, and I'm not judging each person, but I'm saying, it's harder to, it's easy said than done, I guess is what I'm trying to get. And so that doesn't, you could follow what that film preaches to you, and still things won't turn out the way they're planned. But it does provide key suggestions to protect your relationship. But now, moving along, yeah, I had to have this. Father of the Bride Part 2. I got this from the Disney Movie Club, actually, and of course I think that's the only way you can get it on Blu-ray. There may be some DVD, of course it's Blu-ray DVD combo, but yeah, Father of the Bride Part 2. Everyone knows these movies. The Fault in Our Stars. So yeah, Ever After, A Cinderella Story, starring Drew Barrymore and Angelica Houston. And who else? Yeah, Ever After. The Disney flick Enchanted, which is kind of a, yeah, it says here, a Disney classic with a twist. So it does kind of have like the Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty type of fairy tale being told here, but it's a combination of live action and animation, and combining both the fairy tale world and the reality world. Also has cameos by several Disney princesses, like in their live action voices. People like Paige O'Hara, who voices Belle. She makes an appearance. Jodie Benson makes an appearance. You know, several other people. But of course, it does have a little bit of a twist ending to it, so where it's not necessarily the knight in shining armor that saves the day. And next up, Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze, Dirty Dancing. Yes, that has to be on the list. It's not just a chick flick, it's the love story. Because that's also like a stereotype that you can easily do with these collection videos. Particularly with romance movies. Is it romance or is it a chick flick? They're two different things. Like Mean Girls, Clueless, Beaches. Those are chick flicks, but they're not necessarily romantic movies, if that makes any sense. Next up, this Elvis Presley. And of course, he's always trying to get the girl in each. This is a Elvis collection with Harem Scarum, Speedway, and the Trouble with Girls and How to Get Into It. Yeah, it's 3 different films. One flipper disc and one separated by itself, but they're all 3 movies that he did with MGM, so yeah. We got Dear John, another Nicholas Sparks movie with Channing Tatum and Amanda Seyfried. Now this one's this one I really enjoyed. This one's a fun movie to watch. It's The Cutting Edge with D.B. Sweeney and Maura Kelly. And just D.B. Sweeney and Maura Kelly going back and forth, and Terry O'Quinn playing Maura Kelly's dad. And it's kind of a good little romantic comedy from, what was it from? Yeah, 1992. Directed by one of the guys from Starsky and Hutch, Paul M. Glazer. Alright, next up is The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I would classify it as yes, because that there is a relationship between the 2 characters in this film, and it's, even though it's a bizarre, what happens to him is because it's actually a metaphor for what happens to us in real life. We kind of revert back to childhood when we do age. But instead, he's born an old man and dies a newborn baby. And I see my battery starting to run low here, so I'll kind of speed this up. This is a Mill Creek collection. Mickey and Maude, Hanky Panky, There's a Girl in My Soup, and Modern Romance. There's a collection of romantic comedies there. And I'm just kind of putting them back as I see them. The Cinderella remake, live-action remake, directed by Kenneth Branagh. And the original Cinderella by Walt Disney. The Choice, Nicholas Sparks flick with, I'm not quite sure who's all in this film, but yeah, Benjamin Walker, Teresa Palmer. Classic film, Casablanca. Breakfast at Tiffany's, classic film. Bonnie and Clyde. Yes, even though these are notorious gangsters, they were in love with each other. Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston in The Bodyguard. Yeah, about Whitney Houston, famous singer, falling in love with her bodyguard. The Best of Me, again, a Nicholas Sparks flick. James Marsden, Michelle Monaghan. This one I contemplating ever putting on here because it is a comedy mostly, but they do fall in love with each other. Burt Reynolds and Dolly Parton in The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Then we have Beauty and the Beast, the live-action remake in the Ultra 4K nice Steelbook edition from Best Buy. Of course, Emma Watson looking beautiful in that picture there. And then the original 1991 animated classic, The Apartment with Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine, directed by Billy Wilder, classic film. Annie Hall with Woody Allen and Diane Keaton. Was not quite sure about this one, but it's a Don Bluth flick. Kind of falls in the same category with Beauty and the Beast. Anastasia. The American President, Michael Douglas and Annette Bening. About Last Night, Rob Lowe, Demi Moore, James Belushi, and Elizabeth Perkins. And yes, I do have these. These are terrible movies, but 50 Shades of Grey collection. Yes, that includes all 3 movies. 10 Things I Hate About You. Julia Stiles and Heath Ledger. Now remember what I said about I have a hunch that I forgot one? Well, I did. Grease. You gotta have grease in there too. So, yeah. I forgot another one. How about An Officer and a Gentleman? Hope there's no more that I've forgotten. And last but not least, Dudley Moore, Julie Andrews, and Bo Derek in 10. Yeah, that's another one of those movies that's interesting. About interesting relationships. But, so there you go. My entire romantic movie collection. Not sure what the next video is going to be. Hopefully we'll get back to doing some K-Dog movie review, goes to the movies. I'm not quite sure when. I'm not quite sure what the film's going to be. So, from me to you, see you later.